Well, good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here with you. I'm Sue Johansson, and I'm a retired person. I worked for the school system here for 37 years, mostly at West Middle School. And now I sub, and I am a volunteer. I've been a volunteer all my life, and I guess I've been a teacher all my life. So on your form, I am here because I am in civic life. And up here on my first slide, civic life is what you do out in public, how you portray yourself in a public way.
Keegan, go on to the main office, please.
As opposed to in your private life. You know, your private life is kind of your own space, but your civic life is what you do out in the community, where, you know, you might have an article in the newspaper that would mention your name, or there might be a picture at some point for something that you have done. Political life, of course, is in the realm of being elected to something. I have never been elected to anything. I'm not interested at this point in my life in running for office, although people have talked to me about that from time to time. I never felt like it was the right fit. Some personal goals for me, and the way I got started with some of the organizations that I work with, are that I wanted to increase my own personal learning. There were certain areas that I felt like I just didn't know enough, and I wanted to learn more. And so that's an example of a personal goal for me. Now, an example of a public goal, and this is probably the teacher in me, is that I not only thought I needed to know it, I thought there were other people that needed to know it too. And so a public goal might be to act on some of that learning. If you could hit the... So the second standard that we're working with here is the importance of political leadership, public service, and knowledgeable citizens in American democracy. So we're going to name two people that are political leaders. Can you name somebody? Okay, he's a political leader. Joe Biden is a political leader. Okay, now they are elected people, and just like on a national level they are elected, we have people on a local level that are elected, and they are elected to political positions. So the difference between being a political leader and being in public service, while I believe all political leaders participate in public service, not everybody that participates in public service is a political leader, okay? And so people who work for the public oftentimes are called public servants. Teachers work for the public. Firefighters work for the public. Police officers, highway patrolmen, the governor, they all do public service, and volunteers do public service. Why are people leaders, public servants, and informed people important to American democracy? Well, we could just say, why is being informed important to democracy? Has anybody got an idea on that? Why would Thomas Jefferson or Ben Franklin or George Washington think that it would be a good thing for you people, as you grow and become citizens of this nation, that it would be a good idea for you to be informed? Why would they think that? Okay, why would Barack Obama and Joe Biden want you to be informed so that we would have and think that that was important to American democracy? So you know what's happening. That's right. And if you know what's happening, then you can respond in a better way. Next slide, please. So my question was, why get involved? And I've already told you that that was because I wanted to increase my personal learning. So this fall, I organized a tour of the Lock and Dam. Strike one. And we went over to the Lock and Dam to think about the river quality, and the watershed that feeds into the Mississippi River. I don't know if you know this or not, but there's quite a large dead zone down in the Gulf of Mexico. It's a nutrient kind of thing, and it has to do with algae that grows in water that's too high. That's kind of off topic, but I was interested in that, and so I organized it. You know, you contact the Corps of Engineers, you get a date, you tell your people, you get people to come, you get the tour, you learn some things. Can we have the next slide? And so while we were there, I certainly had personal learning, and that was one of my goals. But like I said, being the teacher, I wasn't probably satisfied with just me learning about it. I thought it was important that other people learn about it too. And so there were about 15 of us that experienced the tour. I took pictures, I wrote an article, I published the article. And so I was using lots of skills and talents, reading, writing, speaking, listening, all those kinds of things. And so sometimes when you're thinking about, you know, why am I doing this? It's because someday, hopefully, you will use it as an informed citizen of this country. Next slide, please. All right. Another reason that I work with the League of Women Voters is because you can make a friend. And here I'm with my friend Rosa Mendoza over in this picture. And this is my friend Debbie, and this is Naomi. And we're all registering voters. Well, it's probably pretty simple for you to see the connection to American democracy and registering people to vote. We were doing this like in August, September, and it was before the election, and we wanted to give people a chance to register to vote if they were interested in doing that. And so I was sitting out at Walmart, they were at Fairway, and the League of Women Voters organized about 7 different stations around the city, including MCC, where people could register to vote. We thought, you know, if you're going to participate in democracy, you've got to be registered to vote. And when you get to be 17 and a half years old, you'll have the opportunity to register to vote too. And I hope all of you will do that. Because I think one of the ways that you keep democracy in this country strong is to participate. And the one simple way to participate is to vote. I also want you to be an informed voter. And that's why I want you to know about certain issues. That's why I wanted to know about certain issues. Let's have the next slide, please. So one of the things that I wanted for myself was some new experiences and some new insights. And so last year, the League of Women Voters did a community read. And we read this book by Robert Much called Buying the Vote. And it's about money and politics. And we had a law professor come down from the University of Iowa to lead discussion about the book. And we had about 30 people show up for the discussion. And we all talked about this particular issue. Because issues in a democracy are important. And we learned things from each other. Let's go to the next slide. So this man is from the University of Iowa Law School, and he led the discussion. And we talked about historically what's happened with money in politics, what's going on today with dark money in politics, and with PACs. And it was pretty interesting. I think everybody that was there learned something. Let's go on. Another thing that the League of Women Voters does is that we hold forums for people who are running for office. And so here, your previous speaker, Leslie Sold, you recognize her in this picture?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, she was running for auditor, and then we had people running for sheriff, and that's me sitting kind of off-center, and I was running the meeting. I generally am the moderator for these kinds of forums. Why do we do this? Well, I want to learn about these people because I really didn't know the sheriff candidates. I knew C.J. Ryan, but I didn't know the other fellow very well. And I've known Leslie for a long time. She and I are friends. But I also, the teacher in me, wants other people to know. And so we go down to City Hall and we run our forums, and we have the TV there from cable channel, the government channel, and then it gets replayed on Channel 9. And if people want to tune in, they can watch it live. They can read about it in the newspaper. They can watch it on a replay. And so the idea of informing others is an important piece of the forum. Can we have the next slide, please? Here we are with Iowa candidates. These are people that were running for offices in Des Moines. And this is another example of a forum, but these leaders, people that are running for those offices, were for a different level of government. And again, if people are going to be registered to vote, and I'm registered to vote, you would hope that the people who are casting their ballots know something about the people that they're voting for. And forums are one way to learn about the people that you're voting for. Let's go to the next one. This particular forum was for a national level candidate. These two men were running for the United States Congress in District 2. Dave Loebsack was elected. He is our representative from Iowa. And this was held in Iowa City, and the League of Women Voters of Muscatine County worked with the League in Johnson County and put this together. Again, so that we would learn about these candidates. Now, just last month, we sponsored another a speaker. His name is David Osterberg, and he works for the University of Iowa in occupational health and public health. And his specialty is water quality. And water is one of those issues that if you're listening to the news, once the legislative session starts, is going to be pretty big this year. And I wanted to learn more about what he had to say because I see him as an expert. But the teacher in me, wanted other people to be informed too. And we probably had 50, 60 people come to this particular meeting and to hear David speak. And 7 of those people were elected officials. And I felt really great about that because they're the ones that are going to be casting votes about what the next policy is going to be in regard to water quality. Okay? Next. A couple years ago, we had a woman, her name is Erica Johnson, and her specialty is immigration rights and racial justice. She works for the Iowa branch of the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. She works with a coalition of partners that push for positive measures on local, state, and national issues that deal with immigration policy. There's been a lot of talk during this last campaign about legal immigration and people who come who are undocumented, and it's an issue that is before this nation, and it seems to divide people. And so to have people understand more deeply about the issue of immigration, I felt was important. So I got personal learning, and I hoped other people learned from her presentation also. Now, aside from the League of Women Voters, I also volunteer at the hospital gift shop and the information desk. We call that group the Trinity Friends. And how did I get involved? Somebody called me up and said, "Would you like to join Trinity Friends? We need a jewelry buyer. We think you'd be good at that." And I said yes. And so sometimes you say yes because you want to do it. Sometimes you say yes because somebody else wants you to do it. But this is an example of some jewelry that I bought for the gift shop. And it's something that takes me a little time here and there. I don't put nearly as much time into this as I do other volunteer work that I do. But this is a fun kind of an outlet. And I've gotten to know some new people. It's given me some new experiences because I never did anything like that before. And have I learned something? Yeah, I have. Next slide, please. This is some Frida Kahlo jewelry that I ordered, and we're in the process of selling. It's made by a woman who lives in New Mexico. It's made out of pewter. It's interesting stuff. Yes? And this is the hospital. Now, what does the hospital do with the money? I got to connect the dots here for you. All the proceeds that are made by selling things like the jewelry and the candy and the other stuff that come from that gift shop get put right back into the hospital. And I don't know if you know this or not, but there was just a new piece of radiology equipment that helps with mammograms that was purchased, and it's state-of-the-art kind of stuff at the hospital. It's good for the people who live here in Muscatine, and it was purchased with money that the Friends of Muscatine raised. And so if you follow the connection, I buy the jewelry from a provider. We put it in the case. Somebody else buys the jewelry. We make a profit. The profit goes into buying machines that help the hospital. The hospital helps the community, and the community is strengthened because it's got a better hospital with better equipment. That's a win-win in my book. Okay? I'm also involved in my church. I lead the adult forum. We read books there. We do Bible study. I've been on crop walks. I help with the food pantry and Blessings in a Backpack. If you're musical and you want to get involved, you can participate in the Civic Chorale. I've served meals at Loaves and Fishes and at the Emmaus Cafe. And when Habitat for Humanity was more active in this community, I helped side somebody's house. But churches do a lot in communities, and they strengthen communities, and it's another way that volunteers make a difference in their communities. Next slide, please. I had the chance to go to Cleveland 2 years ago for my church, and while we were there, we talked about issues like we were in Cleveland, and so we talked about the ball team and what they're called and whether or not we thought that that was a good thing, being called the Indians, and we didn't. And so we had a petition that we sent down to the Indians telling them that we thought that they should change their name. There were other issues like GMOs in food. There were other issues that had to do with whether or not we should divest from coal, and whether coal was a good thing for the planet and our environment and our breathing and so on. And so we were dealing with issues that have to do with the earth and the people who live on it. Yes, next slide. We talked about mass incarceration, the oil pipeline. Winona LaDuke was a speaker there. We talked about children who needed school supplies and about United States-Israeli relations. Next slide. We had an awesome speaker who was Antoine Fisher. He was born in prison in Cleveland, and then he was in foster care, numerous foster care homes as a child. He was not treated well by his foster care family. He eventually ended up in like a juvenile home where he went to high school and graduated from high school, and then he went into the Navy. He was pretty successful there. And they made a story of his life. It's a movie. Those of you that get Netflix, you could find Antoine Fisher on there. And he now is a movie maker and fairly successful. He writes poetry and screenplays and does things like that. And so he was somebody that I heard at this church meeting, and he was just very inspirational. Next slide, please. So how do you get started? Well, you should think about your interests. What do you like to do? For me, I wanted to know more about politics and about government, and so I joined the League of Women Voters. Somebody asked me to be the jewelry buyer, and I like jewelry, and so I said yes. Maybe for you, though, maybe you like animals, and so maybe helping at the Humane Society is something you'd like to do. Or maybe you're good at soccer, and so helping a Y team of younger kids is something that you'd like to do. Maybe you sing or play an instrument, and participating in the Civic Chorale or the Muscatine Symphony would be up your alley. And so what you have to do is you have to kind of connect with what your interest areas are. Sometimes you just have to say, how can I help? When can I help? Then you have to say to your friends, you want to come along? Because it's always more fun with a friend. You have to be open. You have to be kind. You have to be willing to learn. And you have to work for a better neighborhood, a better city, a better state, and therefore a better country. And I think in those ways you strengthen democracy, because what it does is it shows you care. And if you care about each other, it's going to filter out into caring about this country. And I think that strengthens democracy. Can we have the next slide, please? We're done with that. Okay. Good. No, it's all right. If you could pull the little slider on the light, please. Very good. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to give you a few minutes to work in your pod, to do pod talk. Phil